We're going to talk about a European project located at the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands. Its title is European History Reloaded, and it does research into the, you'd say, second life of audiovisual material that has been digitized and made accessible online by archives. The official subtitle is Circulation and Appropriation of Digital European Audiovisual Heritage, or short CADEA. The project is a follow-up to two big European projects where more than 35 partners, archives, universities and software developers made archival material accessible from television and film archives all over Europe. And the big question is, once the material is online, what happens to the material and how do people use it? My name is Ego Müller. I'm professor of media and communication here at Utrecht University, and I'm the leader of the project. And I'm here with Abby Weisdorf, Dr. Abby Weisdorf, a postdoc researcher of this project here in Utrecht. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Ego. Nice to be here.
Abby, what was your role in the project?
So I am one of the postdocs on the CADEA project. There are a few others. And my particular kind of role in the project is more of kind of the ethnographer of the project. So really looking at how people and groups use and reuse the archival material that we're looking at. So really kind of looking at reuse from that perspective, from that kind of people-centered perspective a little bit. I'm particularly interested in the sort of the circulation appropriation of the titles, which I look at through looking at remix as kind of an appropriation, and then looking at more kind of curation strategies and sort of personal reuse in terms of circulation.
Could you say a bit more about what remix is?
Yeah, so the definition of remix I use is using existing material to make something new, which isn't, everyone's definition of remix, but I really like this broad version of it because I think it makes the most sense. But when I work with remix, I divide it into kind of three categories, which are really more ethnographic based. So really looking at reasons why people would make these kind of things. So what's kind of the purpose, just to some extent. And so I divide them into three categories. The first one is aesthetic, and that's really remix made for artistic reasons. So kind of thinking of a dance remix, of a collage, of a lot of visual video art installations, these kind of things would be an aesthetic remix. And then we have a communicative remix, which is really remix being used to kind of say something, to make an argument. One of the classic examples would be kind of a fan vid, which is a really older form of fan-made production. So they kind of cut up clips of television shows and set it to music and really kind of use it to explain, okay, this is why this show is good, or this is why this relationship should happen, or this is what's kind of going on here. You kind of see that that style still used in a lot of YouTube video essays, for example, of kind of cutting things up, putting them together to make an argument, or in kind of forms like you see on social media these days, like a fan cam, which is a really short video, but also kind of cut up and altered and kind of saying, hey, this group is great and you should listen to them. But the last one, of course, would be the conceptual, which is kind of using the idea of a remix without necessarily making a specific remix. So people like to use and talk of, say, Google News, where they bring all this kind of news stuff together with an algorithm, or even just saying, okay, something that, is like a remix, any kind of reuse is a remix. A friend of mine, for example, once mentioned, okay, yeah, all those Marvel movies are just remixes of the comics. And there's not really specific things being cut up and pasted into there, but there's kind of the idea in there. So I put them into these categories, but I really think it's more of a continuum than a strict division. So it's kind of, you can move in and out of it. There's different ways of using it, but it helps me conceptualize, okay, what's going on here when we look at a remix?
What does remix then mean for archives?
I think first off, particularly when looking at it in this sort of categories way, you have to remember that remix isn't a monolith. There are different kinds of remix, and these all have different traditions and different relationships to originals, different relationships to sort of the media industry, to the archives they might be working with, to why they do these kind of things, to sort of, are they going to, want to really have the originals involved or have, kind of a contextualized thing there or not. It's not a monolith. monolith. So you really have to think about, what remixers use this material for what ends. So if you're going to work with remixers, you really have to think about what this means. And it also means some challenges. You have to give up a certain amount of control because remixers aren't necessarily beholden to sort of these ideas of context, the ideas of what this material should be for. They're going to have their own ideas. They're going to do their own thing. And you have to be willing to work with that.
So can you give any examples?
Yeah, I think one example that's really interesting is a case I've been looking into for the Kadea project, which is a kind of a smallish group of YouTube channels that make what they call vapor war. So that's military footage and these war videos done in vaporwave style. And vaporwave is a kind of internet art and music genre that involves a lot of very specific visual cues. I'll show a little bit in a second. That kind of says, okay, this is kind of cool and internet-y and retro, but also modern, and it's the kind of thing. So these channels take military footage, usually from the Cold War, sometimes breakup of Yugoslavia, sometimes other things in that category, cut them up, set this to music, kind of usually electronic vaporwave style music, edit the footage, change it around a bit, and really just kind of make these essentially fan vids or music videos for the military. Or militaries in general, usually just kind of all of them. That also means it kind of really focused on the visual aesthetic of militaries and fighting. It's very much this kind of, look how cool these things are. You can see in this clip here that it's really just a lot of looking at militaries doing things. Exercises, showcasing materials, showcasing shooting and tanks, and look how cool this stuff is. I won't go into all of it, but that's the idea of it. And for an archive, this does mean some challenges, because if you're trying to really contextualize what the militaries can do, what this war is about, why this fighting is happening, there's a challenge because this is a way that people might also engage with it, is this very aesthetic, look how cool this is level, and really do a lot of creative work to show how cool these are. And so there's a challenge that you have to work with if you're an archive.
Yeah, so what then about curation?
So curation, again, I'm really, I kind of come out of this more, grassroots, kind of background of looking at what's going on in media culture. So that's also kind of how I take curation. How is archival material being used in people's lives? Abigail DeKosnik has this great discussion where she talks about the relationship between archive, and sort of that's just the material being really stored in an archive, and repertoire, which is the same material being used and taken out and thought about and reperformed by people. So I'm really interested in this kind of tension and sort of how archives become repertoire and in what situations and how it gets used as repertoire. And so I'm looking at, totally different than the military stuff. I'm looking at fans of the Eurovision Song Contest and how they make use of archival material in their lives and identities as fans, how it kind of becomes part of their repertoire, I guess, as Eurovision fans.
So how do then Eurovision fans use archive?
Well, this research is really still ongoing, but I can say some things now. I've done interviews. I've spent a lot of time looking at sort of what the fans are doing and how they're making use of it. But I think on one level, it's using archives is a way of identifying themselves as Eurovision fans, but also as kind of what sort of Eurovision fan that they are. What are they interested in about the contest, and signaling kind of this to other people, of saying, okay, I'm the kind of Eurovision fan that makes these, spreadsheets are a big thing. I make these spreadsheets, I really chart of, okay, these are my favorites. Or I'm the kind of Eurovision fan that will, kind of use it as a sort of a way of talking, as, here's my sending gifts out to people, and kind of, this is part of my identity as well. And kind of, so all these kind of different strategies of reuse, and to sort of, connect themselves to others, both individually, kind of, okay, I'm connecting this, and also to kind of, signal to other people, signal other Eurovision fans, I'm part of this, and like that. Archival material is really crucial to really knowing who you are in a lot of ways, and kind of identifying yourself within this fandom. Particularly as archival material has become more accessible. They use a lot of YouTube. They use a lot of things like that to kind of say, okay, I'm going to show you, this is what I care about. But also, and this is something I find really interesting, is archives become also a way to kind of bring people together in moments of crisis. One of thing that I found very interesting was during the COVID-19 pandemic, one thing that Eurovision fans have been doing is coming together to basically do rewatches of whole contests. Either accessible on YouTube or now accessible through the EBU itself, making these available to people and kind of re-performing watching Eurovision essentially on a Saturday night of, okay, we're going to all watch these. We're going to all follow along on Twitter. We're going to all use this hashtag. We're going to all vote at the end. And so this kind of, kind of bringing the fandom back together, and kind of reaffirming their identities as Eurovision fans, and also having this sort of knock-on effect to kind of the rest of the fandom as, okay, so some people I talk to make a Eurovision podcast, and one thing that Eurovision, again, has helped them do is, okay, in the off-season, here's where I can talk more about Eurovision. If we're going to all watch, the 1991 contest, I'm going to do more research and kind of bring that into the sort of work that I do. So there's this kind of, repopulating or re-examining history and the fandom through uses of archives.
So do I understand correctly that you are in favor of archives opening their collections for fans?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's for the people who are really passionate about this. I think they have a lot to offer archives. They have a lot to, to offer archives to us in terms of use and kind of making it, available to them, but also in terms of how they're going to comment on it, what they're going to do with it, things they're going to say and use. I think, because they have the real passion for it, I think it can be something that can be really helpful for archives, and to sort of bring more people into it and really enhance what the archives can do.
And you're not worried about use like the Vaporwave fans do use military footage?
I mean, I think that's worth considering. I think it's, that is sort of the double-edged sword of this kind of thing is there is always going to be a loss of control with digitization. And you have to know that, that could happen. I'm not sure if there's really safeguards you can put in, you might think about it, but that I might also limit, things like what the Eurovision fans are doing. You have to just, it's worth being aware that stuff like vapor war can happen, but to sort of keep in mind that, this is part of it. If you want archives to be accessible, that kind of means everything, I guess what I would say.
Thank you, Abby.